Now, we are back in Ames, Iowa tonight to bring you all the very latest on all of these results. And Bachmann's victory was a narrow one. She beat out Texas Congressman Ron Paul by just 200 votes. He came in second with 28% of the vote, followed by Tim Pawlenty with 14%, Rick Santorum, Herman Cain, Rick Perry, Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, John Huntsman, and Thaddeus McCotter. They followed in that order. And joining me with reaction to all of the day's events is Kentucky Senator, the one and only, well, son of today's second-place finisher, Rand Paul is with us. Rand, how are you?
Good to see you, Sean.
How about an Iowa welcome, Rand Paul? Good to see you.
Good to be with you.
All right, so you and I have talked about how passionate your dad's followers are. You're obviously supporting your dad.
Right.
You happy with the second-place victory today?
We're ecstatic, although I did tell him we should have stopped at Walmart. We have some really cute grandchildren. If we'd have had them out in front of Walmart, we just need 150 more.
I know,
we could have won.
close. But what do you think this race came down to? Iowa is always an indicator, a state that believes very strongly in low taxes, conservative principles, things you advocate all the time, also family values.
It kind of sounds like the Tea Party a little bit to me. I think the Tea Party was a big victory here. Think of the two most prominent people who represent the Tea Party. Michelle Bachmann's one, Ron Paul's another. Slightly different on some issues, but in large sense represent the Tea Party. I think the Tea Party versus the establishment, big victory for the Tea Party.
Well, it's interesting you say that because Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Any fans of Debbie Wasserman Schultz here?
She's not in the Tea Party. I don't think she's in the Tea Party.
I don't think she's a registered member. She actually said, well, that shows that the Tea Party has effectively seized control of the GOP.
We could only wish. We could only wish the Tea Party would take over.
That's a good point, actually.
We believe in such extreme things as balancing the budget. You know, would that the country would somehow be taken over by people who believed in a balanced budget.
Well, you know, this is the interesting thing. As we were debating the debt ceiling, and I had you on a lot, radio, TV, we talked about this a whole lot. For some reason, this is a changing moment in America where people of principles and values that believed in limited government and our Constitution, which both you and your dad talk about a lot, that somehow principle was a bad thing. Somehow standing on your values was a bad thing, but compromise is always a good thing. Isn't it compromise that got us to where we are today?
Well, I think it's interesting that it's probably the opposite politically now. The people who are doing well, Michelle Bachmann included, Ron Paul, are people who do stand on principles and aren't afraid to say it. They seem to be doing well. Chris Christie in New Jersey. People I think really want bold leadership. They don't want someone who's sort of following the polls or someone like the current president who really is following nothing. I mean, we are living in a failed presidency.
I think he's following something. I think he's following the most radical agenda of any president in the history of this country. I think he's got an agenda.
Yeah, but I think he's confused, really. I mean, look at, he's begging Timothy Geithner to stay. We've been saying all week, Timothy Geithner should resign.
Get out of here. Yeah.
We're going to try to make the Senate and the House vote on a vote of no confidence. We think it's time for Timothy Geithner to go. We see no objective evidence that the economy is getting better. Joblessness is up. People are suffering. Gas prices have doubled. Food prices are up. There's nothing good about our economy. Stock market's in the tank. In fact, I think the stock market has already voted on Timothy Geithner. It's been a vote of no confidence.
Well, same with the president and the president's failed policies. You know, it's interesting because we saw in the debate on Thursday night, you know, this little exchange between Rick Santorum, Senator Santorum, and your dad. And I talked to a lot of conservatives. They agree with your dad on issues. That was a good catch. They agree with your dad on issues involving economic conservatism, fiscal conservatism, but they disagree with him on this sort of hands-off approach on, you know, Iran, the bomb, and all these other issues. Is that going to be problematic for him? Because that came up in the 2008 campaign as well.
Yeah, I think what the thing is that what my father represents and what he talks about is that we should only go to war constitutionally, that we should declare war, that Congress should vote on it. Think about what we're doing in Libya right now.
Right.
We've gone into a war with no vote of Congress, but they say, oh, the UN approved it. So
yeah,
it's
who
like,
cares?
yeah, I mean, the UN, our Constitution doesn't say anything about the United Nations. So it is a different position slightly than other candidates are taking, but at the same time, he truly believes that we should be reluctant to go to war. We don't want candidates that want to just go, and always be involved in war. We want constitutional restraint.
We've lost how many lives in war? After 9/11, George Bush did get congressional authority.
Exactly.
You know, he got the use of force authorization.
Right.
So that was, but you're right, Libya is a very different standard. And after the time had passed with the War Powers Act, which I, by the way, don't agree with, but it is the law of the land, he was supposed to go to Congress and get approval, and the president didn't do it.
And I've always said it's the most important vote any congressman or senator will ever take is whether to go to war, whether I send your kids to war. I have an 18-year-old. I went to Walter Reed recently and met a 19-year-old who lost his leg there. Serving proudly, I mean, doing what he can to defend America, but at the same time, is it not incumbent upon our representatives to have a debate before we send him to war?
Well, and I think that was important. Look at these two lovebirds behind you here. If you want to ask her to marry you, you can. You know, we'll put that
on the air. On the air. Bring them on.
Right. One of the things where we have had great agreement, and a lot of people seem to be missing this, during this debt ceiling debate, I was against it. I know you were against it. Louis Gohmert was here is against it. Steve King's against it. Michelle Bachmann is against it. The reason is we keep talking about the projected baseline increases of 8% a year.
Right.
Washington doesn't seem to want to discuss this right now, either party. It's frustrating because we're never going to get to a balanced budget. I see a lot of young kids in this audience here tonight. We're not going to balance our budget unless we deal with the projected rates of increase that I'm sure everyone here in this audience would like an 8% raise every year.
Yeah, I call it Washington's fuzzy math. If we do nothing, we add $9 trillion to the debt. So they're talking about cutting $2 trillion from the $9 trillion they're going to add. So that means they're really talking about adding $7 trillion to the debt. We can't survive that.
7 is a minimum. If interest rates go up.
Could be more. Could be more.
And if rosy projections go down.
If interest rates go up 1 point, that adds $1 trillion to the debt over 10 years.
Now, a lot of people have wanted you to run for president.
One poll at a time, and I think we have a great choice this year.
If your father didn't get in, would you have thought more deeply about it?
Only one Paul at a time. Right now, this is the year Ron Paul has great recognition. 80% of America knows him. He has single-handedly really created a whole new wing of the Republican Party. And whether we always agree on everything, the one thing that's good for the Republican Party, and I know you're a conservative,
right,
but for Republican Party politics, he's brought all these independents, libertarians, Democrats, disgruntled Republicans, but he's brought this whole wing of the party back. Everybody should be thanking him for making the Republican Party bigger.
How do you identify yourself? You and I have kidded around about this, because you and your dad disagree on a few issues.
Right.
How do you identify yourself?
As a constitutional conservative. I think that the Constitution should dictate what the federal government does, and they shouldn't be doing anything that wasn't given to them by the people.
Well said. Senator Paul, good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us.